Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, thanks for being here. Listen, I support the FDA's efforts to reduce youth smoking rates under their current authority granted by Congress. However, I do not support the unnecessary and unfounded regulations like the FDA's proposed tobacco product standard for characterizing flavors in cigars rule, which is purely based on, frankly, in my view, far more politics than science. What are some of the examples of the unintended consequences that might arise out of this rule?
Langworthy, Luna.
Well, first, the intended consequences would be a reduction in death rates, which is a pretty important one in my view. In terms of unintended consequences, there is always going to be some illicit market when rules like this are put into effect.
So then do you think it's wise for the FDA to proceed?
I think it's very wise to reduce the death rates in
But you also,
populations
but
concerned.
Commissioner, you did also acknowledge, and we're seeing it, frankly, in a lot of markets associated with smoking. But right now, we're focused on flavored cigars. So it is your contention is that it is okay to put in this rule around flavors in premium cigars because you have adults who are choosing to smoke flavored premium cigars.
Now, if you want to talk about flavored cigars, I would just say youth right now are smoking cigars more than they're smoking cigarettes. Flavored cigars are highly attractive to youth, and so it's a major concern that we have. Premium cigars is a different issue. That's in the courts right now, so I can't comment on it.
All right, so secondarily, California enacted a flavor ban on all tobacco products at the end of 2022. California already suffers from the second highest rate of cigarette smuggling, where nearly 50% of all cigarettes used by consumers are purchased out of state. Further, in 2020, 1 in 6 cigarette packs in California were smuggled into the state from international markets. In which ways does an illicit tobacco market impact the United States of America?
You know, I just was out in California about 4 months ago, and I met with the public health department there. Their longevity is so much higher than the average of the United States, largely due to a reduction in things like the use of tobacco. They have very low rates of use of tobacco compared to the rest of the U.S. So I think overall it's a net positive.
But Commissioner, are we going to acknowledge the fact that, yes, there are black markets propping up in whether it's illicit cigarettes or, if we were to go back to the previous topic of premium cigars, in part because of the policies of the United States? Do we acknowledge that?
You know, as I've already discussed, I'm a cardiologist. I'm used to life and death. Almost everyone prefers to be alive. I would rather reduce total mortality and deal with the illicit market than to tolerate 460,000 Americans dying of tobacco-related illness per year,
But Commissioner,
which is what our current rate is, and that's lower from what it used to be.
But Commissioner,
I've
we
taken
also
care of these
Commissioner,
people. When
we
you
also
see people dying,
Commissioner,
it's not good.
we also have to acknowledge the fact that you're not omnipotent. You can't control the actions of people. Do you truly believe that you have the ability to control the actions of Americans if they choose, adults now move away from children for a moment, adults, if they choose to smoke a cigar or if they choose to smoke a cigarette? And by the way, I don't agree with smoking cigarettes. Not a cigarette smoker. But at the same time, do we acknowledge the reality that when you put up these barriers, what you also do is create an illicit market for these products, which could be more harmful to the users that use them?
I would never pretend to be able to control the behavior of people, but imagine if we had taken that attitude. When I started out as a cardiologist, the average patient I took care of was 50 years old, typically a man, smoking cigarettes, dying at a rate of 30 out of every 100 people with a heart attack in the first 30 days. Now the typical patient with heart disease is in the 70s because the rates of use of tobacco drop so much, not because someone
Commissioner,
stood over everybody.
do you think that's because of informing the public, or do you think that's because of government regulation?
I think it's a combination of both of those.
Commissioner, I would argue it is far better to get people to change behavior by informing them of the consequences of said behavior as opposed to putting up arbitrary rules from the FDA or anywhere else.
I like that in general, but this is a highly
That's not in general, Commissioner. That is a reality of the human condition.
When you're dealing with people suffering from addiction, nicotine is a terrible addiction, very difficult to beat.
Commissioner,
entirely different issue.
we hadn't got to a conversation about addiction. We're just talking about FDA rules around, frankly, flavored cigars, and then also some of the California rules around cigarette bans.
Nicotine is a highly addictive substance, so we are talking.
I'm well aware that it is, Commissioner. But again, I would argue that information and education is far better than regulation and elimination. I yield.
Gentlemen's time's expired.